You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? What a game last night. Chiefs 20, Titans 17 as they move to 6-2 on the season, stay atop the AFC West, and now are tied with the Buffalo Bills for the best record in the AFC. That was definitely one of those games that you're going to want to go back and watch again because you'll know how it ends, and it'll be a lot more enjoyable to watch it again. Obviously, anytime it's a victory, you probably feel like that, but specifically with that one, because that was a very frustrating watch, at least for me. I don't know how you guys feel. Let me know in the comment section how you felt watching that game last night, but definitely one that'll be more enjoyable to go back and watch again. And it made it even more difficult because we were doing with KC Sports Network a second screen watch party from the Kingdom Bar and Grill last night, which made it a little more tough to know you're just on camera the entire time and wanting to scream and cuss. And after Butker missed his field goal, I just got up and walked off for a little while. That is the one that did me in for a little bit. But, you've got Patrick Mahomes on your team. You always got a shot regardless of how they're looking at the time. But appreciate you for tuning into this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to the podcast audio. We appreciate you for spending part of your day with us and listening to this show. I'm BJ Kissel. I'm the founder, CEO of KC Sports Network. Former Chiefs insider and sideline reporter. I was with the Chiefs from 2014 to 2020, was on the sideline for the Super Bowl. Doesn't really mean anything now with what's going on with the team, but got an interesting perspective and hopefully share some stories. And I always like this show because once we get into this, it's just 10 things that stood out from the game. They're nuggets, they're superlatives, they're stats, they're interesting things that you can bring up to your buddies in the midst of a conversation to sound a little bit smarter. It makes me smarter just reading through these and laying all these out for you. So I appreciate you listening and tuning into this episode. Again, please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on your favorite audio platform, give us a follow and see if you like any of those shows on the network. It's 10 Things, just one of 16 different shows that we've got on the network throughout the week that cover the Kansas City Chiefs with more than 15 different hosts. And by design to give you a lot of different perspectives from former players, insiders, analysts, different people who cover the team. It's been a lot of fun, and we appreciate your support. But this show would not be possible without our partner, Kansas City Strength and Conditioning. If you're in the Kansas City area or you know somebody who is, that's training a baseball or softball player ages 8 to 18, I would invite you to give my friend John Renzi a call, again at KCSC at 913-638-8960. I've known John for more than 20 years. We played baseball together growing up, and even back then, if there were any questions I had about what my body needed to maximize its performance, John has always been a go-to person or a thought leader in that space. Not surprising to see the success that he's had with KCSC. They've got a new facility opening up near Mill Valley here in the next couple of weeks. So that should be great for them. But again, John won't say it. They've sent hundreds of kids to college, dozens of players drafted, guys that you've watched on TV play baseball, especially in the Kansas City area, have probably worked out at KCSC at some point. So go give them a call at 913-638-8960 if that is something that you are looking for. Now let's get into the 10 things that stood out as the Chiefs again moved to 6-2 on the season, atop the AFC West and tied along the Buffalo Bills atop the entire AFC. All right, these are the 10 things that stood out in this game to me. And the first 5, we're going to spend specifically talking about Patrick Mahomes, because we talked a little bit about on the post-game show, and I talk about it a lot, not normalizing greatness and what we're seeing. And every time I look at these records and these things that the Chiefs communications department puts together after the game, they do a great job of just kind of contextualizing what we're seeing, so we don't just kind of get numb to the plays that he's out there making and the records and just pace that he's on to do different things, wins, yards, touchdowns, all of it. It's crazy when you break it down like this. But number 1, Mahomes completed 43 of 68 passes for 446 yards with a touchdown and an interception in last night's game. His 43 completions and his 68 attempts are both new franchise single game records for the Chiefs, topping the previous marks of 55 attempts and 39 completions. All right, the 55 attempts had been the previous record and was actually a tie. Two people had done that in Chiefs franchise history. The first being Joe Montana at San Diego on October 9th, 1994. And then it happened just a few months later with Steve Bono back in 1994 at Miami. Both of those guys had attempted 55 passes. Again, that was the previous record that just got obliterated by Patrick Mahomes in this game against the Titans on Sunday night with 68 pass attempts. Makes sense. Running game, pretty much non-existent outside of Patrick Mahomes. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but Patrick Mahomes rushing the ball, scrambling, got to be very tough for the Titans to watch, knowing the history and some of the highlights that we've seen of him running the ball against the Titans and scoring touchdowns, just like we saw in the game last night. But the 43 completions, obviously also a franchise record. The previous mark was Elvis Gerbach at Oakland on November 5th, 2000. That previous mark was 39 completions. And then tied for third, Joe Montana at San Diego. Again, that same game, October 9th, 1994. And then 37 completions. Also, Patrick Mahomes at Tampa Bay, November 29th, 2020. And then number 5, also Patrick Mahomes, 36 completions against the Tennessee Titans on November 10th, 2019. So obviously Mahomes is all over these record books. And you move on to number 2, it gets even more interesting. And this is where it gets, I don't know if this is really exciting. And I say sad because if you're watching this and you're a diehard longtime Chiefs fan, you know how long it had been since we had our own guy. We had a lot of good quarterbacks. Obviously, Joe Montana, a very good quarterback. Trent Green, one of the best dudes I've ever met in my life. Phenomenal career in Kansas City, but didn't spend his entire career here. Wasn't drafted here. So when we bring up these stats, I don't know if we should celebrate them or just context, hey, this is what he's doing, but always make me feel some kind of way. But number 2, with his 446 passing yards on Sunday night, Patrick Mahomes passed Trent Green for the second most passing yards in franchise history. Patrick Mahomes now has 21,596 career passing yards. It marks Mahomes' 35th career game of 300 or more passing yards. I'm going to say that one again. I do this a few times. Patrick Mahomes now has 35 career games of 300 or more passing yards, extending his franchise record in that way. His 35 games of 300 or more passing yards are tied with Matt Ryan and Tom Brady for the most in the NFL since he entered the league in 2017, despite the fact that in 2017, Patrick Mahomes only played one game, and that was the last game of the season at the Denver Broncos. I'm sure we all remember that one with some crazy passes that kind of set the tone for what we were going to see, and a comeback victory in that one. Mahomes' 446 passing yards are tied for the 5th most passing yards in a single game in franchise history and are tied for his 3rd best single game performance. He now owns 9 400-yard passing games in his career. And again, I'm going to go back to the first point that we made as far as Patrick Mahomes passing Trent Green to move to 2nd place on the franchise's all-time list. He's about 6,900 passing yards shy of surpassing the late great Len Dawson, who leads the Chiefs in passing yards in a franchise or in a career in franchise history with 28,507. So obviously Mahomes will finish out this season, and then at the end of next season, at some point, middle of the last 2/3 of next season, if he stays healthy, will flirt with passing the late great Hall of Famer Len Dawson for the most passing yards in Chiefs franchise history. And again, Patrick Mahomes is on his 6th season here as the Chiefs quarterback. So we've seen crazy numbers. And when you bring up already becoming like franchise leaders in things like career passing yards, it's crazy. Different game, understand all of those things, but it's still crazy when you put into context like that. And again, Patrick Mahomes, 35 games now with at least 300 yards passing in his career, already led the franchise in that mark. Now he's got 35. Trent Green, number 2 at 24. And Trent Green, in fairness, played just 5 seasons in Kansas City, 6 seasons in Kansas City, as Patrick Mahomes is now in his 7th, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 5 seasons starting for Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, sorry, doing some math with my fingers if you can hear me tapping. Anyway, let's move on to number 3. With his 7-yard touchdown pass to wide receiver Mecole Hardman, Mahomes extended his streak of consecutive games with a touchdown throw to 13, the 5th longest streak in franchise history. Mahomes now owns 3 of the 5 longest streaks in team history as far as consecutive games with a touchdown pass. The number one streak, I guess, for Patrick Mahomes of the 3 that he has, 31 straight games with a touchdown pass. And that went from October 6th, 2019 to October 17th, 2021. It's funny when you look at some of these. I'm not going to read all these dates off to you because I'll spare the people listening to the audio. But basically, anytime one of his streaks ends, it was like the next week, the next one began. So again, not normalizing greatness in what we're seeing from Patrick Mahomes. And as we move on to number 4, this is where it starts to get really, really crazy. Patrick Mahomes sets NFL marks for first 75 games. This is courtesy of the Chiefs communications department. Appreciate all the work they put into this. Despite making just his 71st career start, Mahomes has passed Matthew Stafford for the most passing yards in a player's first 75 games, or career starts, I should say, not games. Mahomes now has, as I said earlier, 21,596 career passing yards. Passing, he's about 340 yards past Matthew Stafford, again, for the first 75 games. So for the next 4 starts that we have from Patrick Mahomes is just him separating himself from anyone else that might try to flirt with that in the future. Again, just absolutely obliterating pacing for the best we've ever seen in NFL history, and some, not these crazy statistics. We're talking passing yards. And then now let's move on to wins as far as success. Now, people talk about quarterback wins and what it means, and should it be a stat for quarterbacks? I know it was a big thing with Alex Smith being here, but the success they've had under Patrick Mahomes, not just him going out, putting up a bunch of yards and not winning anything. We've seen quarterbacks do that before. He's also winning football games. And you look at the most wins by a quarterback in his first 75 career starts. Patrick Mahomes with his 56 wins. Again, he's still got 4 starts left to move up a little bit more, but he's tied with Tom Brady, as I just mentioned, for the most wins in his first 71 career starts. And that's the 4th most. If he gets 1 more, so if they win against the Jags next week, he would tie Roger Staubach and Darryl LaMonica. Those are both in the 60s and 70s for the first 75 career starts for the most wins. And then the most ever is Kenny Stabler from 1971 to 1978. Had 58 wins in his first 75 career starts. So Patrick Mahomes needs to win at least 3 of his next 4 games to pace as having the most wins by a quarterback in his first 75 career starts. Moving along, Patrick Mahomes has now 172 career touchdown passes in his first 71 career starts, our second best to only Pro Football Hall of Famer Dan Marino, who had 173 touchdown throws in his first 75 career starts. So Patrick Mahomes needs 2 touchdown passes over the next 4 games to have the most touchdown passes in NFL history for a quarterback in his first 75 career starts. I like the odds on him doing that. And again, these are the ones that really start to put into context how special we're talking. Yards, wins, touchdowns. You don't see a lot of the same names on all of those. With Dan Marino, you see the yards and touchdowns. He has the 4th most passing yards in his first 75 career starts. Obviously the most touchdowns, but it's nowhere on the wins list. And then the other guys, Roger Staubach, Darryl LaMonica, Tom Brady, you don't see them on these other lists for passing yards in the first 75 career starts or touchdowns thrown in the first 75 career starts. Now, moving on to number 5, the final one that we've got for Patrick Mahomes. After his performance Sunday night, Patrick Mahomes continues to lead the NFL in passing yards with 2,605 so far this season, and touchdown throws with 21. But since we haven't talked much about his scrambling, Mahomes leading the Chiefs last night in the running game, because the running backs for the Chiefs combined for 12 carries for 14 yards, or 13 carries for 14 yards when you add in Michael Burton, the fullback. Patrick Mahomes, 6 carries for 63 yards. But I thought one of the biggest plays, if not the single biggest play in that game last night, was the 3rd and 17 scramble. They were down 8 late in the game. It was that final drive that they went down and got the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. Obviously, Mahomes got the touchdown with the scramble, but his scramble on 3rd and 17 just had to be an absolute backbreaker for Mike Vrabel. They kept showing him on the sideline, and I can't imagine what he's thinking, knowing that whenever they play the Chiefs, they've had so much success against the Chiefs, but in the games that mattered, the one in the playoffs specifically, it was Mahomes' scramble and that highlight run that we see on every Mahomes highlight reel, and we will continue to see forever. But a lot of highlights in last night's game, but I don't think a play is bigger than the scramble on 3rd and 17. So we just talked about all his passing yards and all those things that he's doing, also doing the things like that scramble to help win the football game. But I want to know which Patrick Mahomes play was your favorite from last night. Let me know in the comment section or a review. Hit me up on social media. Let me know what you enjoyed most, what play you enjoyed most from Patrick Mahomes last night. I've got 4 options to kind of jog your memory if you're out there listening. The 3rd and 1 play, the Chiefs were at midfield at 7 minutes and 4 seconds left in overtime. Again, 3rd and 1. It was the Mahomes deep shot to Noah Gray that resulted in a gain of 27 yards. And if you were watching our second screen, you heard me say Travis Kelce's the best to ever do it, because I thought it was Travis Kelce who made that play. So it was even more impressive that not only Noah Gray, obviously when you watch the play, you see he's the one who broke open, but the juggling catch down the field is probably the biggest play of Noah Gray's career thus far, especially in that situation there at midfield. Feel like Andy Reid probably still go for it, but with the running game doing what it was doing, you never know. But that 3rd and 1 play was huge. And then later on that drive, just a couple minutes later, their 4th and 1 play, Mahomes short to Juju on that little scissor route, which a gain of 2 yards ended up not really mattering because they ended up kicking a field goal anyway, and they didn't need to go for it on 4th down right there, the way that it played out. But in the moment, such a big moment for Juju Smith-Schuster, physical player. You see him fight for the 1st down on that play. Huge. And then I just mentioned the 3rd and 17 scramble for Patrick Mahomes as the number 3 play to jog your memory of your favorite play from Mahomes. And then the other one, the 2nd and 11 in overtime, 9:07 left to Kansas City 24. It was the kind of falling down shot to Travis Kelce. It ended up being a gain of 18 yards, play that Kelce kind of cut in front of. I believe it was Kevin Byard, one of the better, if not one of the best safeties in the entire NFL, making a play on that dude in that moment, deep in their own territory when they're behind the sticks at 2nd and 11. Just a big time play. And obviously the touchdown scramble could be on that list as well. But let me know what your favorite Patrick Mahomes play was in the comments. Now let's move on to number 6 and away from Patrick Mahomes here for just a little bit. Got to show some love to the other guys. But let's talk a little Travis Kelce. He eclipsed the 100-yard mark again, and he tied Rob Gronkowski for the most in NFL history. On the game, Kelce had 10 catches on a game-high 17 targets for a team-high 106 yards. It was Kelce's 32nd career game with 100 or more receiving yards. Obviously, like as I just said, tying Rob Gronkowski for the most 100-yard games in NFL history by a tight end. And I like Travis Kelce's chances of breaking that record. Both Kelce and Gronkowski had one more than Tony Gonzalez, who is in second with 31 career games of 100 yards or more receiving. And then after that, it's Kellen Winslow with 24 and then Jackie Smith with 22. So Travis Kelce stays healthy. He's going to shatter every record out there for tight ends because he is the best tight end in NFL history. All right, let's move on to number 7, Mecole Hardman. He was on the receiving end of a 7-yard touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes in the second quarter of last night's game. And Hardman now has receiving touchdowns in 3 consecutive weeks and has 5 total touchdowns in the last 3 weeks over that same stretch. That brings Mecole Hardman's total touchdown to 4 receiving touchdowns and 6 total touchdowns on the season, tying his single season career high back in 2019 when he was a rookie. Mahomes finished the game last night with 6 receptions for 79 yards and a touchdown. It's nice to see Mecole get involved. I know there's the 1 third down pass that was low. I feel like he had a chance. He was open that he wasn't able to bring in, but it's been great to see Mecole Hardman get in with the offense, especially now with Kadarius Toney, who we saw get into the mix, catching the first pass of the game. The Chiefs have obviously a lot of weapons of the high scoring offense in the NFL. I believe they still are after yesterday's round of games, but big time for Mecole Hardman to keep finding the end zone and finding a way to really be patient and do a great job setting up blocks and doing all those good things. But great to see Mecole make some plays. Let's move on to number 8. You're familiar with Josh Briscoe, local radio guy in Kansas City. He always used to at least talk about time of possession and it being a big thing. I think a lot of it was tongue in cheek, but Kansas City had a 41 minute and 28 second to 26 minute and 23 second advantage in time of possession in Sunday's game against the Titans. The 41-28 mark ranks as the 8th highest time of possession for a single game in Chiefs franchise history, dating back to 1984. That is a completely random nugget. I don't know why I shared it, but I thought it was interesting and a lot different than the other stuff that we were talking about on this show. So yeah, 41 minutes and 28 seconds. I know, especially in the first, I think it was the first quarter, the Titans had ran just like 4 plays. So the Chiefs offense really had it rolling early. Not a lot of huge chunk plays, but definitely methodically moving the ball down the field, and then struggled for a while and then figured it out enough late in the game with Mahomes just basically saying, over my dead body game. So moving on to number 9, we're just going to put like 13 in this one, guys. Okay. I'm going to give a couple bonus ones right here, the way that this is all working out, but let's move along to number 9. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball, and the Chiefs defense allowed just 5 completions on 16 attempts in Sunday's game. The 5 completions are tied for the 8th fewest completions allowed in a single game in franchise history, and is the fewest completions allowed since the Denver Broncos completed just 2 passes on November 13th, 2011. The 16 pass attempts are tied for the 23rd fewest opponent passing attempts in franchise history, and are the fewest since the Broncos had just 8 attempts in the same game back on November 13th, 2011. Chiefs communication staff really outdid themselves with the 23rd fewest opponent passing attempts in franchise history last night for the Titans. That is a stat, as is the fact that our Craig Stout had said last night or this morning. If you read our Substack newsletter, you can find the link to that in the description of the show. If you like getting Chiefs content to your email inbox, you can subscribe. We have free subscription to get afternoon updates from our guy Charles Goldman, and then if you want the in-depth analysis, it's $30 a year. I get more than 450 newsletters. But anyway, 10 yards in the second half and overtime is all that the Chiefs defense allowed the Titans offense to get. Again, 10 yards. The Titans' last 6 drives netted -8 yards on 21 plays. The Chiefs defense was absolutely dominant once they figured out, and maybe it was because they had prepared for Ryan Tannehill, and then Malik Willis gets in there and they did some of that option stuff at RPO, and he was holding the ball, something they weren't prepared for. Saw the safeties kind of struggling early with some of that RPO stuff. Saw Derrick Henry break loose a few times. Second half, we talked about it on the postgame show, Craig Stout and Matty Lane did, like bringing Willie Gay down a little bit more and just kind of changing up what they were doing to try and shut down some of those chunk plays and those things that we saw from the Titans offense early in the game when they're finding success. But again, just 10 yards allowed in the second half and overtime by the Chiefs defense. Absolutely dominant performance. And moving along to number 10, one of the reasons and one of the catalysts for that dominant performance, Chris Jones recorded a half sack of Malik Willis, splitting the sack with Carlos Dunlap on the game's final drive. Chris Jones now has 55 career sacks, and he ranks 5th all-time in Chiefs franchise history for most sacks since it became an official statistic back in 1982. So it's always great when your best defensive players or your best players step up in the biggest moments, and we saw that late in the game from Chris Jones and a couple of these other guys I'm going to mention at number 11, and that is Colin Saunders. My guy got a sack of Malik Willis for a loss of 12 yards on the Titans' final drive of the game in overtime. Colin Saunders now has a career high with 1.5 sacks. Don't know if that's necessarily the best thing or the best way to promote that, but Colin Saunders had a team high 6 tackles, 3 solo, including 1 tackle for loss and 1 other quarterback pressure. So great to see Colin Saunders be on that final drive and kind of close it down along with Chris Jones and the guy that I'm about to mention. The 12th and final thing that stood out in this game, or stat nugget that you need to know, Carlos Dunlap closing in on the century mark for career sacks. Carlos Dunlap recorded 1.5 sacks in last night's game of Malik Willis. He now has 3.5 sacks since joining the Chiefs prior to this season. And now Carlos Dunlap, 99.5 career sacks. He ranks 8th among all active players with 99.5 career sacks and is looking to become just the 8th active player to eclipse the century mark for career sacks. Dunlap again finished the game last night with 4 tackles. 2 of them were solo, including 1 tackle for loss, 1.5 sacks, which netted a loss of 8.5 yards, and 2 other quarterback pressures. Talking about those other 7 players that are active in the NFL right now with more than 100 career sacks: Robert Quinn, Aaron Donald, J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, Justin Houston, Cameron Jordan, and Von Miller. That's the list that Carlos Dunlap finds himself on. It was great to see. Obviously, Chris, Colin, and Carlos help close it down for the Chiefs defense and really fuel, at least as far as getting after the passer. Once the running game kind of shut down and it forced the Titans to have to try and throw the ball, was not going very well for them. So shout out to the run defense for putting in a position to make them throw the ball. And then when they had to throw the ball, shout out to the guys up front for getting it done and getting pressure. But those are my 10/12 things that stood out in last night's game against the Tennessee Titans. Hopefully you absorbed some of that information that I just fire hosed at all of you. We appreciate all you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. Or if you're listening to the podcast audio, appreciate you for tuning in and listening. I know there's a lot of places to get your Chiefs content, and we try to be one of the places not leaning into a lot of the clickbaity stuff, but really providing information and analysis and quality content for you to make you a more educated fan. So if you are watching on YouTube and you want the podcast audio, just go to any of your favorite podcast platforms and search KC Sports Network. Not only find our Chief stuff, but KU, K-State, Mizzou, Royals. We cover absolutely everything, more than 25 shows per week overall, with a heavy emphasis on the Kansas City Chiefs, who again moved to 6-2 on the season and sit atop the AFC with the Buffalo Bills. But appreciate all of you for spending part of your day with us, and we'll see you next time, Chiefs Team.